Trying to hit down on your irons could be destroying your golf game. That was the case for a recent student of mine who was having all sorts of issues with his golf swing because he was trying to get that divot after the ball, that compression. In this video, I'm going to show you the right way to hit down and make sure you don't make those same mistakes. Let's start off with doing a little demonstration. And I'd love you to do this with me. If you've got space, then jump up and do it. I've got myself an 8-iron here. So we know that when we want to hit great golf shots, we know that that club needs to be descending into impact. Ball, then turf. We see all the great players taking divots after the golf ball. So we know that the club needs to be traveling down. Do this little demonstration. Take a setup. And from here, I don't want you to do anything with your body. I just want you to, with your hands and arms, just lift the club up kind of over your shoulder and then move it back down towards the ground, sort of like in this fashion, almost like you're trying to hammer something into the ground. Okay, so I'm just going to go ahead and do that. Now, does that feel like the club head would be traveling down towards the ground? Absolutely. Yes, of course. As you can see that very clearly, when I do this, the club head travels down. Now let's do the opposite. Let's take the club head very much behind you and feel like we swing through from there. What does that feel like? Well, that feels kind of like the opposite. That very much feels the opposite of hitting down, almost like I would be hitting up. So what that tells us is, in terms of feels, which we all kind of tap into when we're practicing, what does this golf swing feel like? A steeper movement feels like it would create more of a downward hit. It's not the case, but that's where the issue lies. So this golfer that I was helping, we've worked together for a number of years and he's always had a pretty decent shape of downswing, but he's been quite shallow into the golf ball, not really taking many divots, not really getting that compression. And then what I started to see over a couple of weeks is him searching for these downward strikes, searching for the compression, searching for the divots after the ball. And what did I see with his golf swing? Well, his downswing shape changed. He suddenly had a downswing that got very, very steep. You can see that, the hands moving out, the club moving out, the club head very high. Why was he doing that? Well, it got him into this sort of position that we were talking about earlier, where to him, it felt like the club was going to travel a lot more down into the golf ball. He was searching for those feels, and he was giving himself those feels. Because what happens when that club gets incredibly steep is we feel like it's going to crash into the ground. And what do? You react to that. So he was standing up, his lead shoulder was rising, his head was going back, he was working the handle very high to try and take all of that sort of steepness and downwards out of his golf swing. And what was actually happening was, if I try and put myself in this sort of delivery position that he was in, from here, he was kind of jumping up and falling back, hitting terrible strikes, big left to right shots, and my attack angle was minus, but I mean, that's tiny, tiny amount, 0.3. So I hit down by 0.3, that's not enough. So in this video, I want to show you the correct way of hitting down, because so many of you will be having steep downswings because it feels like it's going to give you the right movement, the right impact. It doesn't. There are a couple of things that we need which are going to give you that downward hit. I'm going to teach you those today. You're going to need some lateral movement. My hips, your hips need to go laterally towards the target by around about 6 to 8 inches. That's important. We need to make sure that at impact, we have the grip end of the club forward of the club head. That's a component which helps us create some of this downward move. And we also need to consider what this lead shoulder is doing. This lead shoulder, if it starts to move up far too quickly, pushes the head back, makes it more difficult to hit down. We have to have the lead shoulder moving forwards and slightly down as we start our downswing. So I'm going to teach you those movements. I'm going to show you how to practice them, and then you'll start to hit down, but down in the right way. Go ahead and set yourself up this little exercise. I'm trying to keep this relatively simple, stuff that you're going to have to hand. Many of you will have alignment sticks. If you haven't, you could just position your golf bag in there. And just show you where that's positioned. So you can see as I take a setup, it's around about a club width outside of my lead heel. We're then going to take another golf ball or something as a reference point, and you're going to place this at around about a 5 o'clock position relative to you if the golf ball was at 12. So 12, 1, 2, 3 would be back to that camera, 4, 5 is over there. So just imagine it's a clock face. It doesn't need to be a golf ball, just something you can use as a reference. So what we're going to do in this little exercise is we're going to be targeting lateral shift, lead shoulder movement, rotation and arm swing. I know there's a lot going on there, but trust me, this is actually quite a simple drill and it's going to get you into pure ball striking, like the best you've ever struck it. So let's think about what happened with that golfer. What did he want? He wanted a steeper downswing. He was wrong to think that, but he wanted a steeper downswing because that gave him the right feels. So from the top, what was he doing? He was using rotation, because rotation sent the club and the hands out. He now felt like, yes, I can hit down on the golf ball. We've explained why that wasn't the case. It actually needs to be a little bit counterintuitive. So what I'd love you to do in this little exercise is, as you make a backswing, first thing you're going to do is you're going to move your midsection, your hips, closer to that alignment stick or golf bag or whatever you've got outside of your kind of lead side. Now notice as I do that, there's not a huge amount of rotation happening. I'm certainly not trying to spin my body out, because that's what's going to move the club sort of out in this fashion. So as I get to the top, I want to feel like I make a lateral movement towards the alignment stick. That's really important. And as I do that, not a huge amount of turn. Lead shoulder, the last thing we want is an upward movement in that lead shoulder. Lots of golfers do this because it kind of feels like it would push the club head down and you can hit more from the inside. It kind of does a little bit, but it makes us very, very shallow. So as you're moving your midsection towards the alignment stick, I want you to feel as if your lead shoulder is actually getting slightly lower to the ground. There you can see, lower to the ground. Lead hip to stick, shoulder lower to the ground. The final thing is you need to get your hands and the grip of the club to feel like they're going down to this golf ball here. Let me show what that would look like. We make our backswing, hip and shoulder, hands go down here. Those are the three movements I want you to focus on. Now as I'm rehearsing this, you'll notice from that down the line camera that I really haven't used a lot of my turn, okay? I've got weight forward, I've got shoulder low, I've got hands down. Look what happens if I now introduce my turn. If I now turn my midsection and my shoulders, so my chest, what happens is I get the handle forwards. And that's the really key part of all this, because if I'm turning my body through the golf ball, what am I going to get as a feeling? I'm going to get the feeling that I'm covering the ball. I'm going to get the feeling that I'm compressing the ball. I'm having the feelings that I want through impact, not the feelings that I want here. This feels like I could hit down, but the reality is what I'm actually going to do through impact. I'm not going to turn, I'm going to back up, I'm going to tip my head back. Through the impact area, all the things that I'm trying to do, all the things that golfer was trying to do were shallowing movements. Because they'd gone way too steep early, they were desperately trying to shallow the golf club. Standing up, tipping back, flipping the club head, all the things we want to avoid. So when you do this little exercise, you will not feel as if you're going to hit down on the golf ball here, but you will as you turn through, because that's when you're putting that real compression on the golf ball. Right shoulder's feeling on top, right hand is feeling in front, palm of the hand is feeling like it's facing the ground. That's where I get my pressure from. That's where I get my attack angle from. Through impact. I don't want to feel it here. You're going to start backing up. So let me go ahead and hit a shot. I've got my full swing kit down here, and I'm just going to do this. I'm hopefully not going to lose this board in that water. I'm going to do this as a little rehearsal. So there's my setup. I'll make a backswing. Hips forward, shoulder down, hands down. Then, as I add my rotation in, okay, did I go in the water? It did. Didn't think that one through, did I? But look at my attack angle, minus 5.2. Minus 5.2. Now I didn't take a divot, probably due to the speed, but the divot was after the golf ball. And when I do it that way, I hit down with compression, I do it in the right way, and guess what my club path is? Neutral, because I've got my club in the right slot. So that's going to be, for many of you, a very, very different feeling. And it's really key that when we practice, we don't automatically assume that what we feel is actually correct. Because sometimes the feels that you have can be deceiving. And that was the case with this golf. Once we'd sort of discussed this and we went through a few ideas, we kind of uncovered that, yeah, he was searching for a feeling of down and he was doing it the wrong way. I made sure that wasn't going in the water. Slightly bigger divot, attack angle minus 5.9. So my club is traveling downwards by nearly 6 degrees, but I'm doing it in the right way. I'm covering the golf ball, I'm compressing the golf ball, I've got a neutral path. Trust me, if you can do that, you're gonna get strikes like you've never struck it before. Solid strikes, efficient strikes, and giving you a really neutral ball flight as well.